Overseas, Israel shot down a Syrian fighter jet today. The Israeli military says the plane breached its airspace. Syria says the jet was over Syrian territory as it was flying sorties against Islamic State militants. Also today, Syrian government forces reached the border fence where a UN peacekeeping force is deployed at the edge of the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Israeli forces have been on high alert as Hamas rockets, the militants launched rockets, mortars, and incendiary balloons and kites over that border. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations says those attacks have been largely ignored by the rest of the world.
While the international media pays very careful attention to every step Israel takes in self-defense, we must not lose sight of the very real damage that is being done to Israel from terrorist attacks coming from Gaza.
Today, Israel partially reopened the main cargo crossing route into the Gaza Strip, which had been closed because of the Hamas attacks. Commercial satellite images indicate North Korea has started dismantling key facilities at its main satellite launch site. Some analysts say taking down a few structures at the site would not realistically reduce the country's military capability or represent a material step toward denuclearization. In May, North Korea invited foreign journalists to observe the destruction of tunnels at its nuclear testing ground, but did not invite outside experts capable of certifying what had been destroyed. At least 74 people have been killed as wildfires raged through seaside resorts near the Greek capital of Athens. Authorities say 26 of the dead were groups of families or friends huddled together, some of them clasping hands and hugs. Others swam out to sea to try to escape the inferno. Some never came back. Greece endures wildfires every year, but the blazes that broke out Monday are the deadliest to hit the country in decades. The U.S. is considering moving around some of its troops in Europe, and that has a lot of people concerned. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin looks at the pros and cons from the Pentagon.
10 days before President Trump's inauguration, the U.S. Army rolled into Poland to send a strong message to Russia to back off its neighbors following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. 1,000 U.S. troops and 80 tanks have served there in a rotational presence since, without breaking a 1997 NATO agreement that barred permanently basing U.S. or NATO troops in former Warsaw Pact countries. Mark Thiessen, a former speechwriter for George W. Bush and Donald Rumsfeld, suggests President Trump should go further in the wake of the NATO summit, saying President Trump could strengthen U.S. national security and silence his critics after last week's Helsinki performance with one bold move. Quote, announce he is moving out most U.S. forces currently stationed in Germany and sending them to Poland. Poland is one of 5 NATO members that have spent 2% of its GDP on defense. In April, the Polish defense minister asked the Pentagon to consider permanently keeping U.S. troops in Poland, offering a $2 billion incentive while meeting with Secretary Mattis at the Pentagon. U.S. Ambassador to NATO Kay Bailey Hutchison said the U.S. is considering the request.
We look at all offers made like that, but no decision is being made right now. But looking at it, yes.
Top U.S. commanders like Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, a Russia hawk who pushed for American troops to rotate into Poland, recently retired as head of the U.S. Army in Europe. He says permanently basing U.S. troops in Poland instead of Germany is a bad idea.
It would be decades before Poland could match what Germany provides us. It's not just about infrastructure, it's about intelligence sharing. Germany does so much for us that doesn't fit neatly under the 2%, if you will.
Another hurdle, placing troops in Poland would inevitably anger Russia and perhaps divide NATO allies who don't want to provide Russia with a pretext for more expansion. Brett?
Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. Up next, a Democratic senator up for re-election finds himself in a tough spot tonight. We'll tell you who it is and what he's facing. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says no delaying tactic by Democrats will push the confirmation vote for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh past midterm election day. Kavanaugh is meeting with Republican senators on Capitol Hill today. He spoke with Louisiana's John Kennedy and Kentucky's Rand Paul, as well as Richard Burr of North Carolina. Before today, Kavanaugh had met with 23 senators since his nomination 2 weeks ago. One of only 2 Democrats who have agreed to meet with Kavanaugh so far is West Virginia's Joe Manchin, who's up for re-election in the fall and facing some unique challenges. Correspondent Peter Ducey tells us from West Virginia why his November opponent, considers Manchin in a lose-lose situation.
Democratic Senator Joe Manchin is holding roundtable discussions about whether or not to support President Trump's Supreme Court nominee with voters in a state that Trump won by 42.
He's very popular in West Virginia, and I'm not done too bad myself.
Republican strategists tell Fox if Manchin votes no on Brett Kavanaugh, he upsets voters. But if he votes yes, he upsets donors. So GOP opponent Patrick Morrisey questions his judgment.
The longer Joe Manchin waits, the more it's clear that he's only in this to appease his liberal donors, and he'll make it clear that he'll only stand for Judge Kavanaugh after it's clear that they have the votes.
Manchin is scheduled to meet with Kavanaugh.
We're looking at all the critical things that are important to West Virginia, healthcare being a big one.
Some West Virginians hope Manchin remembers that.
I hope that he will keep the needs of his constituents in mind, and that would be to protect affordable health care.
Others don't care how he comes down on Kavanaugh.
Because I'm going to probably vote Republican anyways.
Morrisey sees healthcare talk as a stall tactic.
There's no debate with respect to pre-existing conditions. People want to help those who need assistance the most. So he's come up with this fake issue, this scare.
The Judicial Crisis Network is now hitting Manchin with part of a $1.5 million ad campaign claiming healthcare concerns aren't original.
A dishonest talking point he got from liberal Chuck Schumer.
Manchin laughs at suggestions he's a shill for Schumer.
First of all, no one's going to whip me. No one's going to tell me what to do.
The Senate's Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, says he wants the Kavanaugh confirmation vote by October 1st, but that if Democrats stall, he's okay letting that vote slide until right before the November midterms. And if that happens, vulnerable Democrats like Senator Heitkamp in North Dakota, Senator Tester in Montana, and Senator Manchin here in West Virginia are going to be stuck in the swamp while their challengers are home on the stump. Brett?
Peter Ducey in West Virginia. Peter, thanks. The reason we said one of 2 Democratic senators, late this afternoon we learned Indiana Democrat Joe Donnelly will meet with Brett Kavanaugh August 15th. Republicans in Georgia are right now selecting their nominee for governor. That race has been particularly contentious, featuring 2 candidates vying for the pro-Trump vote. Correspondent Jonathan Serra reports tonight from Athens, Georgia.
Republicans Casey Cagle and Brian Kemp are running for Georgia governor on similar pro-Trump platforms. But Kemp goes into today's GOP primary runoff with an unexpected advantage. A surprise tweet from the president last week giving Kemp his full and total endorsement.
It was gasoline on the fire when he endorsed. I mean, it's just gone off the charts. Our people are excited.
President Trump has made his choice.
Kemp seized on the endorsement with a new TV ad and appeared at a Macon rally with Vice President Mike Pence.
With Trump coming out and saying he's my man, hopefully those people that were kind of wondering which way they were going to go prior to Tuesday have made their mind up.
Touring the state by bus, Cagle tried to put the president's decision in perspective.
This is a Georgia race, and Washington insiders are not going to get to pick who the next governor of the state of Georgia is going to be.
That message seemed to resonate with supporters at a Cagle rally in North Georgia.
I respect our president, I support him, but I disagree with his decision.
But the president can change his mind a lot, so maybe 4 days is enough time to get him on Casey Cagle's team.
Cagle touts endorsements from the NRA and Nathan Deal, Georgia's popular current governor. But will that be enough to counter the Trump factor?
I think it boils down to who's doing more for the candidates. And we're seeing the White House doing a lot more for Brian Kemp than you're seeing Governor Deal do for Casey Cagle.
And the winner of today's runoff will face Democrat Stacey Abrams in November. Despite this highly competitive GOP primary, both Kemp and Cagle have pledged to appear at a Republican unity rally on Thursday. Brett?
Jonathan Serra live in Athens. Jonathan, thank you. We'll have the results of that race here on Fox. The Dow jumped nearly 200 points today. The S&P 500 rose 13. The Nasdaq dropped 1. President Trump sends billions of dollars to farmers to try to ease the damage of trade disputes. We'll get reaction from the panel on that and the day's news when we come back.
We're now in the midst of a great economic revival. And it's for that reason that I chose this is the time. Last year, our country lost $817 billion with a B dollars on trade. These countries have been ripping us off for decades. They're all aiming at anybody that likes me. And they have lobbyists like nobody's ever seen. They have the best lobbyists ever put together. I was hearing and reading that they have some of the greatest lobbying teams ever put together.
The president at the VFW today saying he saw a story about very negative about him, and he said, this Trump guy, I got to do something about him. He tweeted out today, tariffs are the greatest. Either a country which has treated the United States unfairly on trade negotiates a fair deal, or it gets hit with tariffs. It's as simple as that, and everybody's talking. Remember, we are the piggy bank that's being robbed. All will be great. While farmers are, it appears, getting billions of dollars to help feel the pain there that they may be feeling. Let's bring in our panel. Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Mara, this, we're told, had been in the works when this whole thing was laid out, maybe not to the extent that they are having to do it.
You mean the help for the farmers? He said all along, I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect the farmers. The farmers are an important part of his base. But I was surprised at the pushback he got on this from Republicans in Congress. Ron Johnson calling it's becoming more of a Soviet type of economy where commissars decide who gets waivers, who gets help. Lisa Murkowski is saying, whoa, you're giving it to the farmers. How about Alaska seafood? How about energy? Where does this stop? So trade is one area where, as Donald Trump remakes the Republican Party, he is getting pushback. They don't like the tariffs to begin with, and they don't like the fact that he's now doing this, what they call farm bailout.
Byron.
All will be great.
Patience.
The president's message in Kansas City was, we need some time. Give me a little time. He's trying to buy time. He's promising that this will work if he just can get the time. And indeed, the $12 billion relief package is designed as a temporary package.
But doesn't China see that as well? I mean,
of course.
Yeah,
That's like announcing when you're going to bring the troops out, right? So the $12 billion is a temporary relief package until all will be great. You're right. There was a lot of pushback, and it was not just the usual Republican suspects like Bob Corker and Jeff Flake. You had John Thune, part of the leadership in the Senate, Pat Roberts, Joni Ernst, Jim Inhofe, John Kennedy, a whole bunch of them. So the question is whether they will give the president the kind of patience that he's asking for right now.
Molly.
So first off, I think it needs to be, people need to be reminded that the Constitution actually says that Congress has the authority to levy trades. That's Article 1, Section 8. It's very clear that they are supposed to handle any commerce issues with other countries. So people are just forgetting this, and Donald Trump is using a national security exception to make the case that he gets to do this. It is also true that we have a very serious problem with China, and it's something that has gone on for many decades. It is a very uneven situation where they practice intellectual property theft. They have massive subsidies for their corporations. They have massive barriers for other people who don't play along with their state-based economy. And we haven't seen the Senate actually take the leadership role that it should be taking to make sure this isn't a national security threat. So people can complain all they want, but the best way to fight this trade war is to have a really good plan for how to handle China's aggression, which is becoming a military dominance issue as well.
Whether they're not explaining it or what, the poll numbers are upside down. The new NBC Wall Street Journal poll support Trump's actions on the tariff policy, 26%. Oppose will hurt the average American, 53%. Here's Lindsey Graham.
I don't know how far you can go with this. I mean, I don't know what's WTO compliant. China's about to devalue the yuan to protect against the impact that tariffs have in China. So when you start playing this insurance policy that there will be no pain in tariffs, I'm not so sure it's going to work, because once you start, where do you stop?
But to Molly's point, Mara, there is an imbalance.
There's a consensus on the imbalance.
Right.
They steal our technology. They force American companies to have Chinese partners. There's a ton of stuff they do wrong, but that's the right question. The wrong answer is tariffs. That's what these Republicans are saying. Why will tariffs solve that problem? There was an idea to solve that problem. Why don't all the Asian countries in the United States gang up against China, exclude them from a free trade pact? It was called TPP, and Donald Trump got out of it. You know,
and that is a great point, because you know the Australians and others say this was the solution. But now he had a real problem.
But at least if you're going to follow the Trumpian solution, have a focused trade war with China, and not against the world, not against Europe and Mexico and Canada.
But you know, what he's asking for time for, and Byron was exactly right. He's asking for time to negotiate bilateral trade deals that will fix this problem. He hasn't been able to do that yet.
That has been a solution. Get out of the big deals, which he says are bad for the United States.
But he hasn't been able to negotiate a trade deal yet. China, I think, thinks that it can wait this out. They're a command and control economy. They don't have voters like he does, and look at those polls. So far, he doesn't have a single economist on his side in terms of his view of the trade deficit as some kind of a scorecard or a TV rating.
Yeah, the Chinese calendar looks a little differently as far as waiting it out. Last word, Molly.
Just that voters should be concerned about the long-term implications of China's dominance. And while it is great to have low-cost televisions, it's also good to have a strong economy that can handle a China that's on the march.
Tell that to the farmers in Iowa come November. We'll see how that all goes. He's heading to Iowa Thursday. Next up, immigration and reaction to my interview with Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen.